Hello, everybody. Welcome to another webinar. My name is Dustin Hartzler, and of course, I am having technical issues. And as technical as this presentation is going to be, I'm actually having problems with my presentation. The presentation is only showing up on my laptop screen, and the full screen that's recorded that's being seen by you is actually like the presenter mode, which is really weird. And so luckily, I don't have a lot of slides, so I'm just going to leave it up just like it is. I never thought that I would have issues with the slides and getting those to work right on the right screen, but that's neither here nor there. That's what happens sometimes when you do a live webinar. So you're going to get to see all of my slides, all 7 of them right up front, so that's completely fine with me. I want to let you know right up front that this is being recorded, and you can watch this later. I'll be sending out links, and if you're watching it later on the replay, then obviously this is a video replay of how to deploy a website without touching live code. That's going to be my goal today. That's going to be my passion, is to show you exactly how you can go in, and I'm just going to show you how I do it, how I edit things locally on my computer. I push the changes out to a version control system, and then I push them out live to my web server, and I never have to open FTP, and I never have to quote-unquote cowboy code, which is what is kind of a code name for what people who will open up FTP, they'll write the code, they'll save it all to a live website that could go down at any minute. So that's kind of the goal and the purpose. I want to let you know right up front that it is important that you know that this is a technical presentation. There is a lot of details that we will be talking about. And let me turn this off. So there'll be a lot of technical things. We're first going to walk through, I've got it broken down into a little bit, but let's get to that in just a second. First, my name is Dustin Hartzler. I'm the host of Your Website Engineer podcast. My goal is to make WordPress easy and to help you create a high quality, like great looking website that you're proud of for either your business, your blog, your personal website, whatever that is. I am a WordPress developer and a podcaster, like I said, and I spent a lot of time, actually every single working day of my life I get to spend with WordPress, because I am currently a happiness engineer at Automattic. We are the company behind WordPress.com, and so we are the folks that go ahead and create WordPress.com and give people the easy ability to go in, create a high-quality website with no price whatsoever. You know, they get their blogs, they can get them set up for free. Of course, we have premium upgrades and things like that, but as a happiness engineer, I get to answer people's questions all day long about different things, how to do this with WordPress, how to do that with WordPress, and all of those things. So I'm really excited to do that, and that's my passion. So that's my quote-unquote day job, but my day job and my hobby are all kind of the same thing, and so I get to spend a lot of time every day learning about WordPress, how to make it better, how to use it more efficiently, and things along those lines. Also, I want to let you know that the slide number 3 here, and this is kind of crazy, you can see them all, but if you are interested in telling your friends that you are listening and learning about how to deploy their website, head on over to dustinislive.com, and that will pre-populate a tweet that all you have to do is hit send, and it will go out and tell people what you're doing right now at 10 o'clock Eastern time, or whatever time it is in the world for you, and then they can sign up and they can come and join and hang out with us for the rest of the evening. So that is what dustinislive.com. And so you can do that. If you are listening to this, you know, a year later from June 2014, you can go to Dustin is Live, and it will say probably something different, because it's probably with my most recent live webinar or live speaking engagement. So today, the goal of this webinar is to explain my step-by-step procedure on how I deploy a website. I'm going to show you how it works. So I'm going to actually go in, and we're going to have 2 websites side by side, a local and a live, and I'm going to show you exactly the steps that I do, and then I'm going to show you the setup and configuration. I wanted to do it all kind of live, but I'm glad I didn't do that way, and I'm glad that I spent some time earlier today setting up some of the system and testing it to make sure it all worked, because there were a few little snafus. My password wasn't right in one of the things, and I had a configuration error on one of my servers, and so it is a little bit technical to get set up, but once it's set up, you can set it, forget it, and you can move on with your life, and you'll see exactly how simple and how fast I can deploy changes to my test development website here. So things you'll need for this presentation, or not necessarily for this presentation, but if you want to go through and do my exact step-by-step recommendations, exactly how I do things, you'll need a few things. A hosting account is the first one. Now, obviously, I hope that you have a hosting account. If you are using WordPress already, you have a hosting account, you have that. If you're using WordPress.com, this will not work for WordPress.com. It's only for self-hosted WordPress sites. You also need a local version of your website. You can use any one of the big tools out there. My personal favorite is Desktop Server. We'll be using that here in the demo tonight. And with Desktop Server, that's what I use. You can also use MAMP. There's WAMP if you're on Windows, and XAMPP. And they all kind of have that same name. But Desktop Server is my favorite. You can actually get that set up, and you can get a free download, and you can use it for up to 3 sites, I believe, for absolutely free. You can head on over to yourwebsiteengineer.com/desktop server or serverpress.com. Either one of those will get you in the right direction. We're also going to talk minimally about version control, and I'm just going to show you kind of how I use it. I don't use version control in the best way. I just use it to make sure that in case I ever have any problems and I have to go back a revision of my website, I can get that back. I did an entire webinar on this a few months back or last year sometime, and you can find that over at yourwebsiteengineer.com/git, and it kind of goes through the process and the procedure of getting set up with version control, how it works, and all the cool things that you can do with that. Another thing that you will need is a deployhq.com account, and we'll get to that in a little bit, but it's basically an account that you can set up online. You can get it for free. You can have a free account. The only limitation with the free account, though, is you can only deploy your website up to 10 times per day, and you can only have one website connected. So if you meet that criteria, you can go ahead and do that. Now, I'll also show you how I can make a dozen changes. I can work on my website the entire day, and then at the end of the day, then I can say go, and I can push all of those changes out, and that's just one deploy. So for most part, if you're not working on your website every single day, all day, every day, most of the time a deploy HQ free account with just one setup is perfectly fine. And then the last piece of software that I will show you, and this is the only premium thing that you possibly quote unquote could need, but it's more of a convenience type thing, and it's a plugin called MigrateDB Pro, and there's actually a free version, MigrateDB, within the WordPress repository, and you can kind of use that. I mean, it does the same thing, but the Pro version, spend a little bit of money and you'll see how slick this works and how fast it actually works. So you'll see that in a little bit as well. So just some steps involved. Here's kind of just the overarching, here's the step-by-step procedure on how I work on a website. So the very first thing is, I've installed a website obviously on my my local computer. It's running right here on my Mac, but it gets outdated very regularly because every week I publish a new podcast, or maybe sometimes I go in and I add a new widget, or I do this or I do that. I tend to make changes, like for a podcast, adding a post, tweaking some text on a page, things along those lines. I do all of that right in WordPress. Now, I'm not doing that on a server level. I'm just doing that within the WordPress dashboard. And so inevitably, my local install gets outdated. And the old way that I used to do that is I used to just go in and I'd have to go and copy the database, export the database, and then import the database, and you have to change all the URLs. And it was kind of a pain. And so that's what I use MigrateDB Pro for. So I'll show you that in just a little bit. Then what I do, once I've make sure that both sites are in sync now, my local and my live, they're in sync, I make the changes to either a theme, a plugin, a development, or a database. Maybe it's a widget that I'm working on that takes a little bit of extra work. Maybe it's something like a new sign-up form or something that it's going to take me a little while to tweak. I love doing all that kind of stuff on a local install. That way people don't see you messing up, because I know regularly I mess up. The link won't work, the color's not right, the image is way too big. Whatever it is, you want to make sure that you are minimizing that, especially if you have a high trafficked site and there's a lot of people coming to it. Before, I used to think, oh, nobody's coming to my site, it's no big deal if I have this link looking goofy for 10 minutes or so. What are the chances that people are seeing it? But the more people that you have to your site, you have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people coming to a website in one day. You know how many people would see a broken section of your website if you always made all of your changes right live so people can see? So that's one of the reasons that I do have a local development and a local install. So then, once I make all the changes with the source code, so whether it be I'm adding plugins, I'm updating WordPress core, maybe I've added a new plugin, maybe I've changed some custom styling, or I've made modifications to my child theme, or whatever that is, then I save those changes with version control. And again, I'll show you it's not that difficult to get set up with version control, and you really don't have to know the nuts and bolts. And I honestly only know, okay, every time I make a change, I save it as a version. That way, in case I need to roll back, in case there's a plugin that's malfunctions or something, I can go ahead and roll back that much code, and I can go on with my day. So for example, if I update a plugin, say I update the all-in-one SEO plugin, and it breaks my site, it's completely broken, then all I have to do is, instead of going out, finding the old version, deleting the the newest version and then uploading the older version, what I can do is I can just revert my change within version control, and then I can hit publish and deploy again, and it will go back to the version that it was, just a few minutes ago. So I really like that. And then once I've saved things in version control, then I go over to deployhq.com, and I have that linked up between my version control account, and I have my server all configured, and then I just say deploy, and it goes and it looks for the differences, and it only changes the files that have changed recently or that had changed within that segment of the version control. And so that's what I end up doing. I hit the deploy button, I wait a few seconds, all the files are uploaded, and then I can go back and I can refresh both sites, and they're identical once again. And then, of course, if you make database type changes, so maybe you're adding, you're doing some sort of configuration, maybe you're setting up a newsletter, or you're doing something that's actually within WordPress itself, you've installed a new plugin, things along those lines, you've turned a plugin on or turned it off, or whatever that is, you want to push those database changes with Migrate DB Pro. What the cool part is about all of these things is you can actually, if you update your version on WordPress or you update all your plugins, you do them one at a time and then you test them to make sure everything's okay. And you don't want to have to necessarily go back over to your live site and then go through the same procedures, click, 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 activate, deploy, or update, and then activate all those different things. You just can do it all development-wise, and then what you do is you hit the button to say deploy, and then all of the stuff live is identical. You don't have to do all of those updates again on your live site. I really like that, and it's just, honestly, it makes me feel kind of like a hacker. I mean, I know I'm not, but, and I'm not like a pro developer either, but it's just so cool to say, okay, a couple of keystrokes, and then I can hit boom, and then all my changes that I've made for the entire day are live, and they've been deployed, which I think is really cool. So with that, let's go on over to the live demo. I want to go ahead and show you how this works first, and then we'll go through kind of some of the steps to get things set up. And if you have questions, go ahead and send those over. In the chat room, there is a chat box. I'll try to keep an eye on that. No promises whatsoever, but I will at least answer all those questions at the end of this webinar if I don't get to them during the webinar. So what we got going on here is on the left of the screen is my local install that is headed over at, I'm going to try to, I'll open this up so you can see this just a little bit, but we're running here at deploy.dev, and this is just a local install of my WordPress website. I'm using desktop server. I set up a brand new instance and I'm running it locally. I also have a webinar. I don't have a link to that right off the top of my head, but if you go to yourwebsiteengineer.com/webinar-replays, you can find one, and it's about how to run WordPress locally on your website. So you want to go ahead and check that out just so so you can see how I use desktop server and how I get the most bang for my buck there. And then on the right hand side, I have this is my live server. Let me extend this here. You can see this, we're running over at deploy.yourwebsiteengineer.com. And if you go there now, you can actually see that live, and you can be able to kind of play along if you want. You can see exactly what's going on, and that's completely live. So I'm going to keep this on the right-hand side. It's very hard since you can't see actually what the URL is up here. Makes it kind of difficult. But just remember, on the left is development, and on the right is deployed. Right is development, and left is live. Let's say it that way. Man, I need a drink tonight. All right, so let's see if my voice can make it through this. For some reason, it's going out on me. But let's go ahead and take a look at the main dashboard. We'll look at the dashboard on each of these just so we can go ahead and see them and see, look at the configurations of both. So we can see on the left on our development site, there we go. On the left, we've got our development site, and we can see our dashboard there, and we can see that we need to update to WordPress 3.9.1. We have one post, we have one comment, and we have one page. So this is on the development side. Remember, it's development, and we're kind of behind, because over here on our live version, we actually have 2 posts and 2 pages. So sometimes since we've launched our new site, we've actually went out and we've updated and we've added stuff to our website. We've added a new post and a new page. I just went through a little bit earlier today and went through and just added a kind of a generic post and a generic page, just so that these were a little bit different, so I can show you how the WP Migrate DB Pro actually works. And so let's go ahead and run that first, because we want to make sure that our sites are in sync before we start really messing around and start deploying and pushing things. So that's the very first thing always, is to make sure that your development site is exactly the same as your live site. So we'll go over under Tools and to Migrate DB Pro, and I'm going to do that over here on this site as well, Tools, and then Migrate DB Pro. It's always a mouthful to say. And I want to actually pull from the live server, I want to pull that into my development server. And so to do that, we need connection info, and that's basically found over in the settings on the live site. And I'll go ahead and I'll just copy this information. I can copy this and paste it over here. And then it's going to try to connect, and it says the connection succeeded, but the remote server is configured to reject pull connections. Yes, so okay, we went ahead and we want to accept pull, and we'll accept push as well. And so now if we go ahead and try to connect, we should have the ability, yes, we have the ability to connect it to our live site that's over there on the right-hand side. Now what the cool part is now you can go in and it actually can replace URLs for you. So let's open this up just so you can see this. We're running on the development side here, but it's basically looking for anything that's on the live site that has the URL deploy.yourwebsiteengineer.com, which was the URL of our live site, and it's replacing that instance with deploy.dev, which is the URL of my local install. And it's also doing that on the same level of here's the root to all of my images, my files, my stuff like that on my server, and then it's putting that and it's replacing that with the root directory on my computer as well. Now with DB Migrate Pro, you can also say what tables you want to migrate. Maybe you want just a couple of them, or you can migrate all of them. You can do that. You can do it on post types, or you can just do certain post types, whether you just want the pages or posts. I'm just going to go ahead and migrate everything for us, just so we can see this. Advanced options, don't worry about those. And then if you want to do a backup of the local before it gets replaced, just in case you're weary that something may happen, you can go ahead and do that. And if you're going to use this profile many times, you can go ahead and save this profile. So I'll just create this profile, and I'm going to say I'm just going to say live to dev, and this is what I call it. And I'll go ahead and say Migrate DB Pro or Migrate DB and save, and it'll just take a couple of seconds here because there's not much of a website there. There's not a whole lot of stuff there. And once it's done polling, we can go back to our dashboard, and we should see the ability for us to log in again. That's weird. But once we're back here, now we can see that we have now 2 posts and 2 pages. And so things are now in sync a little bit. If we go ahead and we look at, refresh here, the deploy.dev, now we have the test post for tonight's webinar. And if we go over to here and we look at this one, we have the test post for tonight's webinar. So our sites are essentially, they're identical. They're exactly the same. So now that we've got them both in sync, they're both identical. Now the next piece that we want to do is we want to actually make some changes on our development site, so we can go ahead and deploy them, and we can show you how simple and awesome this works. The first thing that I want to do, and I'm running this locally. Pretend I have a backup already, or a lot of times what I do is I just keep it. I keep everything on my local site is always a backup, and I always have the live version in case there's something happens. So I normally don't make a backup of my development site before I start making changes and I start doing updates. But the first thing that we want to do is we want to do WordPress 3.9 update. We want to just go ahead and we'll update this to the latest version of WordPress. That way, we're going to do this, and then we're going to go and test and make sure that everything works properly. So we went ahead and we've got that all worked out. We were running, I believe, on the test version, it might have been 3.8. I'm not exactly sure what version, maybe 3.9. Not 100% sure there. But now we're running the latest version, and you can see we have a plugin to install as well. But what I like to do, and this is, you're just looking over my shoulder, you're looking at me updating and working on a website. What I like to do is I like to save that as a version of my website. And so we're going to talk a little bit about Git, and Git is a version control system, and I'm using a software on my computer called SourceTree. There's a whole bunch of different places that you can, or there are a whole bunch of different user interface pieces of software that you can actually use to use version control, so you don't have to learn any code whatsoever. So I think if you go to Git, if you just Google Git, we should be able to get to git-scm, and then we should be able to, if we go to downloads, we can find all of the different versions that you can download of different platforms to make it work better. I guess this isn't quite what I was looking for. I'm looking for GUI clients. So we want to go through here, and you can look at all of the GUI clients that are available for Mac or for Windows or for Linux, and all of these do exactly the same thing for the most part. You know, they're just their user interface, and they're kind of all set up in their own way, shape, and form. So I'm using SourceTree. This is free for both Mac and Windows. I'll show you how to set this up in just a second, but I've actually got this. So this is at git-scm.com/download/GUIs. But I've got this running over here on another screen. I'll just swipe on over, and you can see right now it says that I have 815 files that have just updated. These are all the files within WordPress 3.8 or 3.9.1, which I just updated. So we'll go ahead and we're just going to select all of those, and I'm going to say that I'm going to go ahead and push this out, and I'm going to say that this is I'm committing, or I updated to WordPress version 3.9.1, and then I'm just going to go ahead and save this. I'd also like to mention that, and I'll show you how to do this as well. Again, the second part of the workflow is just me walking through exactly how I do it, and then I'm going to show you how to set this up. But I have my SourceTree account set up with my version control is set up with an online service called Bitbucket, and that's kind of what Bitbucket talks to Deploy HQ to know what's on my server or what's local on my computer and what's out there on the cloud. So I'll show you that in just a second. So I went ahead and I saved that as a version. Another thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to go into the plugins, and I'm going to update this plugin as well, and then I'll save that as a version. So you can see that there's a new version of Akismet ready. So I'm going to update that one. That one was super fast. It's done. It's updated. And let's go ahead and go back over to my version control. I can see all of these things have been updated. Some of them have been deleted. Some of them have just been changed. I'm going to go ahead and do the whole thing, and I'll just call this updated Akismet to 3.0. Sometimes I put the version number, sometimes I don't. It just depends. If you have the version number, it's very easy to roll back, and you can go backwards, and you can undo your changes if you know what version you're trying to go back to. So that's what's really nice about that. So we'll go ahead and commit this one as well. So that's all the changes that I'm going to do right now. I've just basically updated things. This is in general what happens to me about once a week or so on my site. You know, I'll have a new version of something come out, and I'll have to test it. And this would be the perfect opportunity. Now we're local. We can go to our website. We can go and we can look. Okay, does this post look okay? Does if we had widgets running, if we had third-party stuff on our site, are all of these things working properly? Those are some things that you want to look for when you are, you're making these changes and you're doing this sort of thing. That's the whole purpose of having a development site, to make sure nothing's broken and to make sure things are working properly and they're working as you think they should be. So, okay, I'm all done now. Let's say that's all I had to do tonight. All I had to do was update WordPress to the newest version and update that one plugin, and now we're set to go out and go to our SourceTree account and get that all set up. So I don't think I have a tab open for that, so let's go ahead and go to it is deployhq.com, and we can go ahead and we can log in, and I have a different account here, so and then you can do this and can log right into this, and you can see here it starts from 11 or £6 per month, but it's free to open it's open source, and no credit card needed for 10 days. So I'll show you that as well. Let's see if we can get logged in here. And yep, I'm logged in, so we can go ahead and we won't save this, and I can say go ahead and deploy now. Now remember, I have all of this stuff set up, and so I don't have to worry about getting anything set up anymore because I did all of that beforehand. And basically all that was is I went in and I just basically put in my Green Geeks credentials. You can see that this was deployed to the Green Geek server about 6 hours ago. That's when I was doing the prep for this webinar and getting things all set up. You can also see which server it is here. So maybe if you have multiple servers, if you have multiple projects, you can pick which server different things go to. So that's really nice and really handy. You can see that we've got, this is the version that is most recently updated. So when versions are saved within Git, they have this, it's called a SHA-1 hash, and it's this, I don't know, 40-some character letter and number thing that identifies each version of which version of commit that I have made. And so you can see that these are different. So it means that there are some files that need to be updated, and there needs to be some changes run to them. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit run deployment. There was a preview button there that you could preview it, and it's going to list down all the files that are going to change. So you could go ahead and do that if you were interested in just seeing, okay, do I have things set up? Am I going to change the right files? Maybe if you are, you're changing a system file, you're doing something on a style.css, or you're doing, whatever that is, and that's the only file you changed, you can run our preview and you can make sure that the files are going to move and they're going to move properly. As we're going through here, you might be able to see that it is deleting some of these different plugins. So it's deleting different things. So within the plugins, we're deleting different things that are no longer needed. There was some Akismet stuff. There's some of it's basically deleting the files that were updated. So it's deleting the old ones that were there, and they're uploading the new ones. And the cool part is, like, I don't know exactly how this is working and how it does what it does, but it doesn't seem like my website goes down while we're waiting on this to happen. So if we go back over here, and this is the website still live, and we can do a refresh and it's still live and it's still working, and we can still go to the different pages and things along those lines. So remember, this is the live site as we see it. And then with the live site, remember, we were still running an old version of WordPress, and we had a plugin that needed updated. And so we'll get to that in just a second. Let's go back over and let's see what it's doing here. It's still working on these files. It's going to take just a little bit. I mean, we did some pretty big stuff. The big one was that WordPress update, and so there was a lot of files that changed in a version from a 3.8 to a 3.9.1. So we're just waiting on all these files to be deleted. And again, I don't know exactly how this is doing this, because it says it's deleting files, but yet my website is running absolutely perfectly fine. So I'm not exactly sure how that works, but I just know it absolutely works. So we'll just go ahead and hang out here for just a minute or so, just as this continues to go. And I just want to say a few other things while doing this. Like, this has saved me so many headaches, because I always put off making edits to my website because of the fact it was like, oh, it's not in sync, or I first have to take the time to download or export the database and then import the database, and then before I import it, then I have to change all the URLs, and then my widgets are broken, and then this is broken, and it just takes so much time and effort to get things in sync before I can even start working. Like, that was always a huge barrier for me. But now we're to the point where, like, and honestly, this took me probably, I don't know, 6 months to figure out the perfect system for me. This one, and like I said, this is my system. You're watching me do what I do, and it's not necessarily going to be the perfect system for everybody, but this is what works for me, and this is what I really enjoy. Now you can see we're starting to upload the files, and so we're going to start uploading some of these newer files. But this system is like it's so friction-free for me to actually want to go in and actually make changes to my site, because I know that every piece of code that I have edited is always local. That was another thing too. Like, I would always sometimes I would just cowboy code, if you will. Like, I just need to change this one little thing real quick, and it's just a change in a file on my server, maybe the index.php file. I'm gonna make a little tweak to it. Well, that happens, and then I would have to make a tweak to a style sheet, and then I make a tweak to my functions file, and then before I know it, I couldn't remember which. I didn't know what files were right and what files were wrong on my local site. So then I'd have to download all of the stuff from my server. It would take a while to download everything, and then I have to make sure that everything was set up properly. It was just a lot of headaches, and it just caused a lot of friction, a lot of headaches. I'm kind of bummed now that finally I've got this thing all figured out, or figured out to what I want it to do and how I have a good workflow now, and now I don't have any clients to do it for. I have a couple of websites of my own that I do this for, but I don't have any clients. I can't imagine like how much extra time I would have saved when I was doing this, or if I was doing the same exact procedure for clients. And so we're still uploading those files. There was about 700 of them that needed to be uploaded, and so it just take another couple of seconds. And so let's see, what else can I talk about while we're doing this, while we're waiting? So the big piece is you want to make sure that you have that local copy on your website, or of your website locally. And you can use any way, shape, or form, even if you want to have a local quote-unquote copy. I'm trying to think. You could probably put that on another server somewhere, but it's just so much easier and so convenient to do things right here on your computer. That way, in case you make edits or changes, you click save in your editor, and from there you hit refresh on your web browser and you can see those changes immediately. You don't have to upload things and you don't have to waste that time doing those types of things. And so like I said, this setup here, it's going to cost you, if you do it exactly the way that I do it, it'll cost you one MigrateDB Pro license. And I want to say that I forget what the license run on that thing. Let's just go ahead and take a look at that while this is still loading, and that's at deliciousbrains.com. And they have just the one plugin, and the pricing is if you have a personal site, that can be up to 12 installs. And so for 12 installs, that actually means that you have 6 websites, because you need one on a development side and you need one on the live side. And so this is honestly all that I have. I just have the personal one since I don't have that many sites anymore. If you want 100 installs, it's $100 or $200, and Elite is $450 for 200 installs. And so for $90, that's all that it's going to cost to get all of this up, and that is that's emails and update support for 1 year, so it's like $90 per year. But I find that it saves me so much time to keep things in sync. It's just absolutely incredible, and absolutely like probably one of my can't live without plugins, even though that I don't use it that often. You know, like I update my website once a week with a podcast that comes out on Wednesdays, and so I'm not actually like making all of these changes all the time. But you know, if it goes a week or two between times that I work on my site, like I want to make sure I always have the latest and the greatest back on my website or back on my local computer. So that's kind of where I stand there with WP Migrate Pro. They do have a free version in the WordPress repository. The only thing is, with the free version, you can do kind of like what we did with the you can basically just download your database. So you can download your database. It can change all of the stuff that you need. It can do a find and replace like your old URL with your new URL, but then you have to upload that manually back up through PHPMyAdmin, which is that's another screen that you have to open up. And normally to get to that, you have to open up your hosting web host cPanel. Then you've got to open that up. Then you've got to log in. So it's like a few extra steps to do that. So if you want to do it completely free, you could do it that way. But I really like the MigrateDB Pro. I really like how that works. So this is really taking a long time. I'm guessing it's because that I am doing a live broadcast with some of my upload speed here on my computer. Usually it doesn't take this long, so I'm going to just guess that is the main reason behind that type of a thing. So while we're kind of hanging out and we're waiting here, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and post those in the chat room. There's a chat box there that you can go ahead and, oh, maybe not. Maybe I need to enable the chat box. Okay. So now I can actually see the chat box. So, okay, now I can see what's actually going on. So, awesome, awesome, awesome. So, so Tracy asks, do you do this every time you make changes, even the tiny ones? Yes, I make changes with every change that I make always goes local first. I always do it on my computer first because of the fact, like I said earlier, because of the fact that I wanted everything to be in sync all of the time. So this deployment took 8 minutes. It is completely done now, and 723 files were changed and 205 files were removed. So it removed the old stuff and it uploaded, and it change the stuff live. Now let's go back over to our live site. So that one is over here. Let's go ahead and open this up. You can still see that it says that we have WordPress 3.9, but we haven't really refreshed anything yet. I'm just going to go ahead and click the database. It says database update is required because we have a new version, so we know that that came through. And so we'll go ahead and click continue, and then it still says we've got an update down here. And this is normal. It's very normal when you have a plugin that you've updated, that you'd have to just go back into the plugins area, and it goes through and it kind of goes back out to the servers, and it goes and looks to see and make sure that everything is set up properly. And it does say the one there, but it usually takes 1 or 2 times to click around. Like you see right there, it's gone and it's completely updated. You didn't have to do anything. You just have to click around a few times just to get those little warnings and those those bubbles to go away. And so you can see that it's completely brand new, or it's not brand new, but it's completely in sync with the other site. So you can see that on this one we have one update to do because it's a theme update, and on our other site we also have, if we do a full screen, we have one theme update to do there as well. You could also do really cool things with the DB Migrate Pro, MigrateDB Pro, however you say that. If I wanted to do this on my local site, I could do a full screen, and if I wanted to do a new page, I could say like Dustin's live page on webinar, live I can't even spell tonight, live webinar. And then I can put some just gibberish text in here. And I can go ahead and hit publish, and then what I can do is I can actually push this change out to my website. So if I created this brand new page, it will actually create with the exact same page ID. It's going to give everything the exact same by pushing this out to my server. So I can go back to MigrateDB Pro, and this will be a quick one, I promise. This one goes really, really fast. So I want to push this, and I'll have to get that contact information again from over here. Sorry for going full screen and back and forth a little bit. It's just so much easier to see when we're on full screen that I want to go and I have to go get to the settings, and I have to do this again, and I have to do that, and I have to paste this in here. And it's basically telling me that SSS is disabled, which is okay because they do push things in an encrypted way, but you just want to go ahead and just, if you're not running an HTTPS website, it's going to give you that error. And then I'll just go ahead, and it's smart enough to know that it's on the dev side, and we're replacing it with deploy.yourwebsiteengineer.com, and we can just go ahead and we can say migrate. And it's going to migrate. We could have just said just to migrate the posts. That's because that's the only thing that we saved, and that would have made things much, much quicker than 6 seconds. But, you know, not really too big of a deal. It was only 6 seconds. And now if we go over to pages, we can go to pages, and we can see the top one is going to say, or it's not the top one, but it says Dustin's live webinar because they are written there in alphabetical order. So you can see you can make changes both ways. Where it gets really, really kind of touchy and confusing and kind of painful is when you have a shopping cart or you have comments or things like that, when things are always being subject to change on your live site. So they are, if you take your quote unquote, you start working on your site and you kind of take it down, if you will, you're working on it, you pull in a version of your site and you work on it for the next 4 hours. Hopefully, if you have a shopping cart or something like that on your website or blog post, you're getting comments during that time, or you're getting people to purchase things. So then that's where it gets really tricky. You just want to make sure that you are pushing the changes back out only for those specific tables in your website. So let's go back. Let me just show you this real quick. On this page, you can see that there's different tables, and so you can migrate all tables, or you can migrate only the selected tables. And I do this a lot because sometimes I don't want to, with all of the plugins and all the different tables that I have, you don't want to go ahead and, overwrite stuff or just waste time or whatnot. So if you do post and post meta, those are basically the two that are going to send out content or the data for your posts or your pages. If you have anything like if you're using the WooCommerce plugin, there'll be a table in here that says WooCommerce, and you probably don't want to ever push that from your local site to your live site. Otherwise, you'll miss that people page you for things and things along those lines. So that's what makes this plugin really great. If you click with the command key, you can highlight just as many and click as many of them as you want, and so you can do that as well. And then so you've got all of those options. It's really, really cool, and it's such a powerful plugin. Now, I said that the third step of this process, first we were going to kind of talk through it, then I'm going to show you how I did it, and so I've done that, and now I'm going to show you a little bit of the setup and a little bit of the configuration on how to do what I do and how I kind of got this set up. So the first thing, let me go ahead and think this through. How do I want to do this? The very first thing that I want to do is I'll show you, I'm not going to show you how to set up a local site, because that's all in that other webinar that you can find at yourwebsiteengineer.com/webinar-replays. So I won't go ahead and just tell you all about that. But once you have a website installed, then what you want to do is you need to set up the source tree. So because you want to get these version control things working properly. So we've got source tree over here, and I believe I have I think I have one that I can open up a website that's local that doesn't have version control, and so we can just kind of see what this looks like. So I'm just going to go ahead and close this, and I will go to open, or let's go to new. And so we want to say create a repository, and we want to go look for one. So we can go to our sites folder. This is where they all are kept. And I'm trying to think which one maybe I don't have version control on yet. Maybe this one. Maybe there's no version control here. Let's go ahead and say open here. It's a dnm.dev. And we can go ahead and create. So now we've got that saved in as version control. And so I can open this up, and we can see that there are 5,417 files that need to be committed. That means that basically it's a brand new install, and we want to go ahead and commit those things. One piece of guidance and one piece of warning: within version control, there is a file called the gitignore file. It's a hidden file. I will post in the details for this webinar what you should put in that file, because if you just commit everything, then that's going to commit your wp-config.php file, and if you commit that with your local credentials and you override that to your live credentials, then that will break your site, because you're basically saying look at a different place and your website will completely stop working. I know this for a fact because I did this the very first time I deployed that deploy.dev site earlier today when I was getting it set up. I pushed it out without using the ignore that specific file, and again, that's all kind of a little bit about version control, but I'll make sure that I put that in the show notes, if you will, for this webinar, so you can see that and you can understand, and just all you basically have to do is create it, and you can copy and add that file directly to your version control. So we can go ahead and look here real quick that the version control is actually, it's a hidden file, so that's why it starts with a .git. I've just enabled the hidden files here on my computer so I can see it, and then I've got this gitignore file, and I'll go ahead and include everything that's in this file so you can see that on the webinar replay. But I'm going to go ahead and just add that to this file as well, so we don't mess anything up and we don't forget about it when it comes to another time. Now, another thing that I talked about early on, and I might have mentioned it or I might have forgot, but when it comes to version control, you can actually house your version control. You can house them on different repositories. So there's one called GitHub, and GitHub's awesome, and you can do all. That's mainly for like free stuff or for open source type projects. So it's completely free if you want to open, if you have a plugin or things like that, and you want to put that file out there so anybody in the world can see it, anybody can use it. If you want to have private stuff where people can't see what you're working on, then you have to pay for those repositories. With Bitbucket, bitbucket.org is a repository just like GitHub that does the same thing, but you can have as many free sites as you like. And so that's really cool to create free sites. So basically you sign up and then you can say create a free repository. We'll call this one D&M, because that's what it is. It's running Git. That's basically about all you need to do to create the repository. And then it says the repository is all set up. It's empty. All we want to do is now you want to put some bits in your bucket, it says. And so in order to do that, it's really simple. We go back to over here to the version control, and we go to the settings. And then under settings, we can add a remote. It's a remote repository, and we just say add. And if we go to Bitbucket, and I think we just put in the username here, so Dustin Hartzler. And we put the remote name, so we're going to call this D&M, and then the URL and the path is when you click that button and you tell it that you're using Bitbucket, then it's giving me an error there, but then I can go ahead and say D&M, and we can say OK, and then I will say OK to that as well. And if I click this button here and then I hit commit, it will automatically, I guess I can put commit down here, and then I'm going to say initial deploy, and we'll go ahead and commit this. And when I do that with this box checked, it says I guess since it's a large file, it's going to take a little while. But basically, when you have this checkbox checked, it pushes these changes immediately out to the web. And so in a little bit, I'll be able to refresh this page, and then when I refresh it, it's going to have like all of the files that have just been pushed out there that are local on my site. So basically, everything that's getting pushed out here from version control is all of the files that are stored on my web on my computer. So it's got the WP-admin and WP-includes and WP-content with the themes, the plugins, all of that kind of stuff. That's all built right in. That's all of those files that are saved on my computer are now being pushed to Bitbucket, which is another way to another way to save your website. So you can have backups of your website, and then you can have backups on Bitbucket, and you can have backups on your main computer. And then for me, if you're super anal, then I back up my entire computer to Time Machine and to Backblaze. So really, like if my website ever goes down and I can't get it back within 10 minutes, like there's been an absolutely huge catastrophe, and there's some really big problems somewhere, shape, or form, because I've got websites. I've got my yourwebsiteengineer.com website is pretty much everywhere. And so that's what I want to just kind of highlight that piece as well. So we'll go ahead and let that set up and let that go. And then when it comes to the deploy.hq, let's see if I can I add another one maybe? Because of the fact that I'm using a trial account, I can add more than one. Maybe settings, maybe I can add a server. I already have the same server, but I want to add a new, I'm not exactly sure. I've never had more than one another push at a time. So basically, I want like a new project. I don't know exactly where that is. Maybe because I am still using the free account, they won't let me do, they won't let me have more than one project. Look here real quick. I think that's just where I am now. Anyways, but basically you go in here and you put in your Bitbucket account, or you basically say you're trying to connect to Bitbucket. You put in your Bitbucket username and password, and then you can connect to any of those things that are any of your sites that are within Bitbucket. And then you basically the next step in the process of setting this up is going through and adding your server FTP information or SFTP or SSH information. You can put any of the three, and it can securely send your data, from your Bitbucket account to your live site. And I like Bitbucket because I don't want all the source code for my website to be live for people to see, so I'm using a hidden file within Bitbucket. So I know that this part, and this was my concern when doing this webinar, that this small piece at the end, kind of walking through the steps, is a little bit vague just because of the fact that it does take a few minutes to get set up, and I'm more than happy to help you get things set up within Deploy HQ if you're having a problem, or if you're running into something that's not quite configured properly. But I just didn't want to do all of that live and just take up all the time with 5 minutes of setting up and that type of thing. So that's why I did all of that before. So I'm about ready to take some questions. I know there's a little bit of a delay in the video between the video and the question. So if you have anything that you want me to answer, go ahead and ask that in the box, and then I'll get to those in just a few seconds. So as you can see, that as I'm wrapping up here, this is a very efficient model. It's very simple to update and then deploy, or update, commit. Basically, the steps are update your site, commit the changes, and then deploy those changes, and just kind of in that rhythmic pattern. Now, honestly, when I first got started building websites, I bet I deployed, quote unquote, I sent changes out to a server 100 times per day, because I was tweaking things. I was going in and I was oh, I want that margin to be 10, and then I would save it, and then I would upload it, and then I would look and oh no, it's not quite right. And always when I'd upload it, I would use FTP, and I would drag a file from my local computer, and then I would push it, and then I would drop it where I need to go, and then it says, are you sure you want to do this, because there's a duplicate file. And it was always this kind of a pain and this headache and this process to do. Now it's simple, it's direct, it's fast, it's easy, and the barrier for me to update my site is so much less. It just doesn't take me any time at all to update my site and to make a change, push it live, and then go on with the rest of my day. It's not like it takes up the entire day. So I'm going to go over and head on over some questions. Dean says, wonder how the license works with multi-site installs. I'm guessing that you were talking about the Migrate DB Pro. I'm not exactly sure, but it does work. I think one of the versions said it did work with multi-site. That would be something that you have to check out. Honestly, of all of the years that I've installed WordPress and been working with WordPress, I've never done multi-site, except for WordPress.com, where we host websites. That's all one big gigantic multi-site, and with millions of users. And so I've used it in that manner, but I've never used it on my own personal sites for anything, which I might be able to check out sometime. Any other questions that are coming in? People are asking if there's anybody in the Philly area attending WordCamp this weekend. Jeff, if I was in the Philly area, I would definitely be there. I do not live so close to that. Let's see what else is going on. There's just some chat. Let's see. Avoid breaking all the things. How to develop safely by Dean. Yeah, that's exactly the right way. How to not break things. I'm always excited. Yes, that is. I'm on fire. I am always on fire. The slides are small. Yes, that is the problem. It was broken. I don't know. It's all kind of crazy. So Minneapolis was attended by Dean. Hope that you had fun with it. That was WordCamp presentations are just always awesome, and they always inspire me. I always get pumped up about being so excited about being there. So let's see what else. There's a free online book about Git. Let's see who else is around. Adam's here. A couple Adams in the showroom. And I'm reading all of these backwards, apparently. I thought the chat room went the other way. So I was reading them from top to bottom, and I should have been reading them bottom to top. So let's see. Okay, let's see here. Adam Wells asked, if you added a picture or other media to that post, would you need to FTP the media to the live host or upload the folder? So that is a great question, Adam. If I go to, let's see if I can even do this. But basically what happens is when you add something to your development site and you do a new you add new media. So we can select a file. Let's see if I have anything. Is there anything hanging out on my desktop that I can use? We'll use this, my new newsletter header. We can go ahead and upload this, and when we upload this, it's not, I haven't connected it to any page or post or anything like that. But if I go over to, and this isn't the right, we want to open the one that we had open, this deploy.dev, and we can go to our working copy, and we can see it should show that it should show, and I don't know why it's not just at this second, but that image is now in the uploads folder. So it's in the wp-content slash images. Is it images? Uploads slash 2014 slash 06 slash and then the name newsletterheader.png. So that's in that folder, and that should update when it comes into this here. So it should be in here, and we should be able to just go ahead and commit that. I'm very confused at why that's not in here. Oh, did I? I bet what I did in the haste of the live webinar. No, I didn't. I was going to say I thought I moved my entire Git folder into there, but it looks like my Git folder is still syncing with Dropbox, so that could have been a little bit of confusion. But usually when you upload anything that goes server side, that gets put into the version control, and then when you deploy via version control, it automatically gets pushed out. So that's another great point. When you don't have to to get everything in sync, you don't have to re-download all your images and then relink them, and it actually saves a lot of time. Costas asks, instead of using deploy HQ, could you create a Git repository on the live server and then fetch the Bitbucket repo from that? If your server allows that, yes. I believe that I'm using Flywheel as my host, and this is the recommended way that they recommended to do this, and so that's the way that I went. I went ahead with the recommendation. There's also another script out there, and this one, for some reason, I can't get it to work on my computer. I think it has something to do with you running source tree at the same time. There's some little hiccup that that doesn't work for me, but it's called Dandelion, and it is a version on GitHub that basically it's a Ruby gem that you can download and install, and this works really well when it works. So how this works is you can actually download it and install it on your computer. You get it all set up, and then you navigate via the terminal. You navigate to the folder of your site, or where your Git repository is, and then you basically just type dandelion space deploy, enter, and it does everything that everything that this deploy HQ does without actually going to deploy HQ. And so you don't have to open up a new tab and log in and click the button and stuff like that. You can just, a couple keystrokes, boom, and you're done. It's absolutely as easy as that, and it was working perfectly for me for one time. The only thing that I can track it down to is something with the source tree version control that I'm using. There's something's not working quite right, and I haven't had a chance to play with it and kind of go in and fix it. I know that deploy dev this deploy HQ works perfectly for me, so I'm not too worried about getting it right. So this is a fail-proof way for that to actually work for me. So that works for me. Another question is another question by Jeff says, question for you. How did you do that Dustin is live address to go to the Twitter box? That is a big secret of mine that I'm never sharing. No, actually, it's really simple. If you go over to click2tweet.com, and you can go here and you can sign in, and I don't know why it always asks me to sign in via Twitter, but I have to go in and authorize the app via Twitter. But how this works is you basically can go in and you can put in any text that you want. So you can see that we had 111 clicks on, and I'm not sure if that's the actual click on the link here, but I basically created this text earlier. I'm learning how to effortlessly deploy my website to my server with @DustinHartzler. Learn how now. And I put the link so people could come and they could register, or they could watch live as it was going on. And then what that does when you generate that, it actually gives you this keyboard shortcut, or the shortcut over here with the quick URL to actually do that. And then you can see if you do the, whoops, I didn't quite get that. We can go and we can, thought you can click on this to get the actual link. Well, it basically pulls out, maybe if I turn on Flash on this site, it'll help. Oh, there it is. There's the link. So it puts that link in, and it automatically does that. So then all of that I did was I went to Hover, where I have all my domain names, and then I just said, if somebody goes to dustinislive.com, it forwards them to this click to tweet URL, which then forwards to this Twitter, and then it puts all this information right there, and then it makes it super easy and super effortless to actually for people to click that tweet and to go for it. So that is how you do that. Dean says, can you please go over the 3 steps again with a few more bullet points under each step? I'm not exactly sure, Dean, which 3 steps that you'd like me to go over again. If you could just add that back to the chat room, I'll be sure to do that. So I like doing the Dustin is Live, especially at conferences. I think that's a lot of fun because I normally will say, and you can go back and look at the click to tweet. So this is the one that at WordCamp in North Canton, I said, I'm learning about how valuable adding podcasts can be to my WordPress website at B109 at WordCamp 2014. I forgot about this one, or I forgot to actually add my Twitter handle, so I didn't see any of those notifications when people tweeted about me. This one I did when I was at NMX. I basically said I'm learning about my WordPress and how to keep my site secure at Dustin Hartzler and Dre Maida's website. And so like then I got those people that were able to go in and Jeff says, I'm going to register jeffischangingdiapers.com now, which is awesome. That is so funny. That's awesome, Jeff. So that's a lot of fun, but that's how I did it, and it really makes you look like you know what, quote unquote, you're doing. It's very simple to do, and like me, I really enjoy my Twitter stream blowing up just a little bit. That doesn't happen all the time, so I really like that, and that's why I do it too. Plus, I bought the domain name. You know, you pay for a domain name, you want to use it a few times, so I use that on webinars. I do it on live speaking and things along those lines. So that is what that is. And I'm still waiting to see if Dean asked that question again. Can you please go over the 3 steps again with a few more bullet points? And I'll go ahead and answer that as well. Okay, the 3 steps, meaning the update local site, commit, and I forget the 3rd step. Okay, yeah, you update the local file, you update your local site, you commit, and then you deploy. So you want to update your site, and that can be anything. That's you're updating anything, and if it's any files, the files go through version control, and if you update anything within the WordPress dashboard, like configuring a plugin or doing anything like that, adding a post, adding a page, configuring widgets, moving things around, adding pages, deleting pages, all of that stuff gets migrated with WP Migrate DB Pro. And then you commit those changes. There's no committing when it comes to anything WordPress dashboard related. That all gets synced back over. So you just kind of skip that step. But when you make changes, you update a plugin, you delete a plugin, you delete a theme, you add a new theme, you change files within I was going to show today like how to go in and actually make a change on with a style sheet and then save that and do that as well, but didn't have time for that. But it's basically you update the site, you commit it, so you save it. So that's basically like saving a snapshot of your site. And then what you do then is you can go deploy that site with either WP or with WP Migrate DB Pro. You can push your local site out to live, or you can also use the deployhq.com to kind of sync your Bitbucket with your website. So that's how that works. So yeah, Dean also says that Hover makes registering a domain a little too easy. Yes, I agree. I have way too many domains over there because that's what I do. I buy domains when I think of them and they come to them. I'm going to close this version. Maybe because this is running, I'm just going to quit SourceTree real quick. Maybe force close SourceTree, and I'm going to open back up. Let's force quit this because I know that's going to take forever. If I open SourceTree, whoops, this is YWE. So this is my own website, and you can see, like, I'll just show you this. There's really nothing that is going to jump out, and you can see, like, so I updated the popular post sidebar widget. I updated WordPress SEO. I updated Livefire. I updated iTheme security. So you can see I go through and I update all of the plugins individually, or I installed 2 plugins here, so I did that, and then I updated the version. When I install plugins, it's pretty easy to uninstall plugins or delete the plugin. So I just go ahead and just anytime I install, I put them on the same one. So that's what that's all about. And you can see a lot of the stuff that I'm doing in here is just updating stuff. This was a revert. I was just playing around, so you can actually go back and you can revert some of your changes. Let's go back to recent, and we'll go back to this deploy.dev. And so if we go back over here, we should be able to see if we go into our working copy. There's still not the ability. I didn't see that file that was updated, but it should be in here somewhere. But the cool part is, like, if you wanted to go back and you wanted to revert this change, like, you can right click and you can there's different ways you can reverse this commit. So that basically reverses all the code. You can do a lot of stuff. I am not an expert in any way, shape, or form, so I barely know how to use this, but that's what I end up doing, and I do it more just for the sake of they say, like, if you want to be a great programmer, you should follow the steps of other great programmers, and I know that all good programmers, they version control everything, and I'm one of those, like, super big pack rats that are like, oh, if that code's there, I should probably just comment it out in case I ever need to use it. Well, that's super inefficient, and if you use version control, you can delete all of it, and you can never feel like you can always get it back, because, like, oh, if I wanted to get this code back, even if I don't know how to use version control and get it back, like, okay, how do I reverse whatever I did? I can still go right here and I can copy that and I can paste it wherever I need later on. So that's what I really like about version control. I'm just about done here. If you have any other questions, please feel free to ask them in the chat room. Again, you'll get a link to this replay, and so you can see it and you can watch it again. Feel free to go back and watch it again, go through it slower, and really take the time to set up the different plugins. Like I said, everything that I talked about tonight is free except for the Migrate DB Pro. But you can do it without that. That just saves you a little bit of time and frustration. And believe me, if you make a lot of changes to a website, or to up to 6 websites, it's totally worth the $90 for the year. Just think of how many headaches you're going to save when you can click one button. You can walk away for a second, go get a cup of coffee, fill your water bottle up, and you can come back and your websites are now in sync. So with that, I think I'm going to wrap up. It's been a little over an hour. Thanks so much for tuning in and hanging out today. So sorry about the problem early on with the slides not working right. I cannot believe that. I tested everything like 2 or 3 times today to make sure all the pieces are working, but I never tested the presentation. And I'm actually using a cool new software tool that's called DeckSet. And this DeckSet is basically everything is built off a Markdown file. So I wrote all my text in Markdown, and you can go ahead and you can hit play, and it plays this, which is not what I wanted because you can't see the main screen. You can see both screens. So anyways, that was just a little side note that I wanted to say. I think one more question is Acosta says, if you work with clients who like to go in and make changes, i.e. cowboy style, for example, with CSS, or just update plugins, is there an easy way to find what changes they made and get their changes to the local dev server? Let's see here. I don't think so. I think that would be something that you'd have to really work with them. Either you'd have to say that, okay, you're going to be in charge of the plugins. I'm trying to think if there's a way to. I don't even think that you can suck the changes back really that easily. I think it's really going to be a hard thing to try to fix. I would mention if if you want to, like, I would make sure, especially if they're doing CSS changes, I would make sure that they're using an additional plugin that adds style type things, just because like that stuff can be easily duplicated on a development site. So if they're just updating plugins, like, it's not too big of a deal, because then you can just, on your development site, you can just update your plugins. But with CSS, if they're like adding CSS into different places within the style sheet, that would be an absolute nightmare to try to find the different changes and things like that. But if you use Jetpack, I know Jetpack has it built in, and there's a couple other plugins that just have like an extra add your custom CSS stuff here. Then that you can kind of open up their site and open up your site and kind of make them the same. I would say that that would be a pain. I would make sure that you really have a good contract with that client to say, like, the different things, like, I'm not going to be, if you mess the site up, then, it will take me time to figure it out and make it work and things along those lines. So that's what I would recommend with that. So they're saying, with Jeff, when you're using PowerPoint or Keynote, you hit Command X to flip between the presenter school. Hey, let me try. Command X? Command X. Nope. That's a good tip. It's Shift X. Shift X. So if you'd like to see my slides here, no, we can start. That's kind of embarrassing. But thanks, Jeff. That was a good tip to know. Shift X actually changes that screen, so that's really, really cool. Tracy says, does it matter if we're using a shared server such as Bluehost? Nope, it does not matter at all. I'm using a shared hosting server at GreenGeeks. It's basically all you have to do is put in that shared server information, your FTP information and username, password, and it connects and it does all the magic itself. And so that's how it works. And you can use any server in the world. If you're using, I think Costas was the one that was mentioning earlier about using version control Git on their server, you can do that as well. So I think it works with pretty much any server. So thanks, guys, so much for hanging out, and ladies and gentlemen and everybody, wherever you are, whatever time it is in your time zone or you're watching it later, thank you so much for tuning in and hanging out. I've got tons of other webinars over at yourwebsiteengineer.com. You can click on the webinars tab at the top and you can see them. So excited about my next one. I'm not sure exactly what's going to be. I'm always excited to do these things because I just get so pumped up and energized, and it just gives me a great opportunity to record some video and do some cool things online. So if this was helpful, I would just love to hear from you. If you can send over an email to Dustin@yourwebsiteengineer.com, or when I send you an email with the replay link and whatnot, you can just reply to that and say how helpful it was. And if you'd like to see more developer kind of level talks like this one, or if you'd like to see more beginner type stuff, because this one was just over your head, I'd love to hear that out as well. So with that, I'm going to wrap things up. Thank you guys so much for hanging out, and we will talk again soon. Check out or listen to the podcast, and you'll hear when the next webinar is, the next date and time, and what it's going to be about. So until then, we'll talk again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.